Hey there, welcome to another edition of Between Two Nuts. And today I am sitting down with Brion the Observer. And we're going to have a little chat for a little bit. But I wanted to thank Brion for coming on today. I've been sick for like a week, but I'm better now. And I don't sound like sick Yoda. But how are you doing today, Brion?
Oh, good. Just real quick,
Yeah,
it's Brian, the
Brian.
Observer.
I want to
Yeah.
say Brian. Brian?
Well, just because it's spelled Brion, and people are like, oh, it's like there's something
Byron.
they see that they want to either correct or say it differently, but
So
that's okay.
it's Brian. Okay. All right, so this is Brian, everyone. Now that we have introduced him properly to the class, um, go ahead and tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your channel and where they can
Well,
find you, too.
I mean, you could always find me on YouTube, on BitChute, on Twitter. I even have a Twitch channel. Um, and what I do is I started doing some comic reviews, and even as fun as that was, I started seeing some other stuff going on and things that I've researched for a long time. I was like, this stuff needs to be addressed,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm talking about it. I'm talking about the things that aren't exactly comfortable to talk about, at least not cordially, within
Mm-hmm.
the circles of fandom. Basically, I've observed a lot of things, and I will tell people what I have observed.
I think that's fair. I think there's a lot of other things outside of just the pulp culture bubble, and I don't think people quite grasp sometimes how those
Well,
things connect.
it's a symptom. It's a symptom of a larger disease.
Yes, exactly. And I think that because we were just talking about the terms of service for Twitter as well as of course YouTube, but just some of the things that they're doing like as far as their language and what they're censoring, what they're not permitting, what they consider to be quote hate speech and what isn't considered hate speech. And all these things are very dangerous when it comes to freedom of speech in general. And I know that there's phrases and there's things that are said that offend people. I mean,
Hmm.
that's without a doubt. But the issue is that yes, you have the right and the freedom. People need to understand there's a difference between rights and freedoms. You know, rights are things that are issued by the status quo. That means they're given permission to, like women are given permission to vote, and as opposed to having the freedom to just generally vote. But as citizens in general, we have the right to vote. For example, our freedom is freedom of speech, which means it's not a privilege, it is a freedom. So we
Hmm.
don't need to ask for permission through a law to give us an okay, like a big fat okay. In the end, we're responsible for what we say. Absolutely, there are
Hmm.
consequences to what things we may say, but at the same time, we should not be ostracized to the point where you can't even be given that permission. And I think that that's where that dangerous line becomes when they start to say, "Oh well, you don't have freedom of speech anymore because hate speech." And I'm like, guy, I can give you some words. I'm not
Oh
gonna be
yeah.
nice, but
Oh, big time. And it's like we have a society that thinks that they should walk on eggshells.
hmm
And it's like if you walk on eggshells this whole time, you're never going to excel. You're never going to present something um, for the betterment of society,
right.
because like, oh, hey, it might offend this, may offend that. Well, that person might not even know about the background of some culture, and I'm all for being as smart as you can, learning as much as you can, and not being ignorant. But you can't fault people for not learning everything. That's the
Absolutely not.
problem. That's the problem. It's like, and how many of those people that sit there and fault people for quote unquote ignorance, how many of them are ignorant of a lot more facts than they put on?
Well, it's true. And in the end, too, it's I think what we have the issue in our I would say in American culture. I'm just going to focus on ours because if you get into everyone else, then it just gets more complicated.
Cultural appropriation.
Oh, exactly. It's ridiculousness, and but at the same time, there is a laziness factor that's kind of come into play when It's about information that's gleaned. Now I understand that people want to immediately scream fake news, and we need to have people that filter that fake news. And there's plenty of fake news, but a lot of times it's going to be coming from the talking heads on your CNN, MSNBC, or any of those other, you know, guys on your regular scheduled programming. The reality is that you have to take the information they give you and kind of filter it
Key,
and
key
question it.
keyword is programming. You're being programmed.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and in a lot of senses too, it's there is a propaganda that goes on with. I mean, I don't care if they lean left or right. Either one, they're still doing this behavior. We just see it more prevalent right now on the left, but on the right, my God, post 9/11, it was like a
Oh gosh, I remember
oh
that.
man, it was.
Oh yeah.
I've in my lifetime, man, that made me absolutely just blown away. I guess just by the sheer amount of it and how much people clung to it out of fear. And fear really does dictate a lot of things, and I think that's what we're seeing on the left. The left is just using the same tools the right did.
Hmm.
And the reason why we have all this crap going on with the left, the extremist behavior, is because we had extremist behavior on the right.
It's a pendulum swinging the other way,
Yes.
and that's something that I don't think they understand. It's like I get it because part of me, at the time was buying into the fear just and I had to step back and look at things like, wait a minute, no, how is this constitutional? How is this anything? And it all goes back to tribalism. People like to
Mhm.
be on either a winning team or a very populist team that that perpetuates something. They feel like, okay, yeah, we won, but I dare to argue with those people that I say this is once pretend like once everything is, let's say, under the left control. Let's pretend that for just one moment. And you've seen this happen. What happens when one of their own has an independent thought?
Oh man.
They go nuts.
Mhm.
They go nuts and they scream and howl. Same thing that happened on the right,
Oh.
Let's
Mhm.
take for example, okay, I mean I mean yeah, you had this whole like for the better term neoconservative thing, and then here comes Ron Paul start to say stuff and they just crucify him,
Oh yeah. Mhm.
And so it's just one of those things. It's like once you start to um, say your own opinions, or your own thoughts, and you break from the collectivism, that group mentality will they'll tear you apart like wolves, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought we were friends. I thought
Mhm.
we were buds or whatever. It's just I just have a different opinion on this one issue or whatever. And then what normally happens now is that person would wind up backpedaling, apologizing,
Yeah.
giving heed to the group, saying, "Oh, I was wrong. I was ignorant." Blah 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 blah. You know, and so they grovel and they lose all credibility with all sides of the issue, and they're pretty much a non-person, especially on the online world, on the social media spectrum.
Yeah. And there's so much of that behavior where those even those apologies that are given, you know, where they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say that." They're not genuine. So
No.
you have a lot of these superficial apologies that really don't mean anything because in the reality is that if you're willing to accept, oh well, he's we're gonna let him back in, but he'll always be on probation, right?
Yeah.
Because they too are superficial. I
Hmm.
think that there's I know okay, it's just like with religion.
Hmm.
It's I don't believe for a minute that anyone joins a religion and they're like, you know what, fuck this group of people, screw that group of people. I don't think that everyone goes into a religion thinking that way. I think that when they enter a religion or even a cult, okay, which are plenty of those,
Oh yeah.
you know, when they enter it, I don't believe for a minute they're going into these things thinking, I want to be a hateful person. I do believe that people have good intentions to some extent, meaning if they go into the religion themselves freely. Um, but I do think that over time, like, there's false sense of authority, there's false senses of the pedestal thinking, and also a false sense of self that's included because religion sometimes, as well as any type of faith-based system, can really tap into the weaknesses of individuals. Now, don't get me wrong, I find faith a completely different thing than religion,
Hmm.
very different and totally separate. And sometimes you can have religion without faith. And,
Oh yeah.
a lot of cults are the same way. They feed into that, like the New Age, movement, unfortunately.
Hmm.
A really well meaning movement, but a whole lot of narcissistic personality disorder running all over the place.
Oh yeah, yeah. Narcissism and high degrees of a certain sects of witchcraft go hand in hand. I've found out in my studies.
And
Uh,
what's really curious too is that whew, the this narcissistic type of personality within that New Age movement is so bad, and it's still clung. I have a few people that I know personally as either family members and friends. They don't like talking about anything negative.
hmm.
So that means they don't like talking about life, meaning
Yeah.
that you can't have a normal conversation with them about things that are going on in your life. Not petty shit. I'm talking like serious stuff, like whether it be death
Hmm.
or it be conflict of some kind. They will be like, oh, that's just too negative for me. I can't talk to you. And they'll distance themselves and act like that you're just the most toxic thing in the world because they don't want to have to deal with reality.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's quite disgusting, and it's actually sad. It makes me sad because these were people that were well adjusted, well rounded people until they devoted this part of their brain to thinking, well, everything should always be positive. Yes, there's a way to live positively, but in order to embrace positivity, you have to have negativity so you know the difference between there's a yin and a yang, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, a yin and yang, a white and a black, or at least knowing that the fact that hey, you're not always going to have a good day.
Mm-hmm.
At the bare minimum, because I mean, you could even look at it and like, let's say the prosperity gospel, like for
Mm.
instance,
Mm-hmm.
and once you start saying things like, "Oh, well, what about this or that," and you say words like sin, it's like, "Oh, don't say that. Don't say anything negative because God won't bless you." It's like, what are you talking about? There's things. It's in the Bible. It's
Like,
there. It's in the book.
you
It's
can't be
said.
frightened of, you can't be frightened of like dark things. And
No.
there, and not only there's the checks and balances, but it's also a reminder of one's weaknesses. And in order to be a stronger individual, you do have to have strife.
Hmm.
How many times have you run across, and I'm sure anyone who's listening to this has run across someone who has never really had true hardship, but instead creates their own hardship and then bitches about it, but then doesn't want to,
All the time.
right, and they don't want to
All the
fix
time.
it, you
Yeah,
know?
like well, for instance, we knew this person, and all she would do would be complain about her mother, and we're like, well, then why don't you move out?
Mm.
I
Mm-hmm.
can't do that, and then it's like you have the power. It's like you make how much a year? You can move out. You could move out now if you wanted to,
Right.
you know.
These are these are obstacles you can overcome by making adult decisions, and
Hmm.
adult decisions being mature decisions. Um, it, you know, it's really bizarre. Like the coping skills are why you have to have a yin and a yang. Is that if you don't have difficulties, then you're not going to learn coping skills. You're not going to learn survival instincts. You're not going to have any street smarts. If you live in a bubble your entire life, I think that's also why we see so many people who are part of that cancel culture um, mentality, right? Where they're kind of witch hunting everything that they see as negative, or if somebody hurts their fifis online, they lose their
Hmm.
minds because they can't cope through that. And I'm thinking, you don't need to oil the squeaky wheel. Let the squeaky wheel fall off and rust. They're gonna do it,
There you go. Yes,
you know.
exactly. I mean, it's I mean, when we have a system and that's designed to where if you work hard at it and if you put forth what you're doing and you succeed in the market, you're rewarded. Now,
Mhm.
if you just kind of sit on the sidelines and just kind of you know join with the club or whatever, and then wonder why you're not going anywhere, is because you limited yourself. You limited your ability to be creative or or be innovative. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Is because you sat there and bought into a system that says this is the way it is, this is the way it has been, this is the way it'll always be,
Mhm.
instead of saying, well, how come I can't do this? Let's figure out why I can't afford that or why I can't go this way. Why? Because some professor told me I can't. Now, why did he tell me I can't? Is it the actual true fact, or is it because it's in the curriculum that he's supposed to teach to tell me that I can't do something?
Right. When you have people putting down, boxing you, basically putting you
Mm-hmm.
in a box, and saying you can't leave this box because X, Y, and Z, and even sometimes those facts, which I put in quotes, those facts are not necessarily facts. They're more of an
Mm-hmm.
opinion or biased,
Yeah.
opinion. So that's why it's so important to understand, not only information that you learn through, let's say, a classroom, but in life generally, there's going to be everyone has different perspectives on a
Mm-hmm.
situation. Maybe they've had bad experiences, and I do believe in accountability. So I don't really believe, and this is, and I've argued with people about this, but I don't believe for a minute that anyone is truly 100% a victim. I believe no matter how horrific that act is, we made a choice on some level to be there or
Yeah,
to,
that is
to
that is true. Like we've been there at one place one time. We could have chose not to leave the house that day, but we did.
hmm
At some point, yes, we did.
and
Um,
it's not something we necessarily consciously aware of, but the point is that our decisions lead us to different paths, and how we
mhm,
react, respond if something terrible does happen. When you give someone 100% of the credit of causing harm to you, it does
mhm.
take away your power.
Not
And,
only
you know,
does it take away your power, but let's say after the fact, let's say this person was convicted of said heinous act and
hmm
everything else like that, or even wound up dying, but yet you just sit there and you grovel and you stew. And I'm not taking anything away from the tragedy and the
right,
trauma of it, but I am saying that you're letting this person live
hmm
rent free in your mind. Either
right,
A, they're moving on with their own lives, or B, they're dead, or C, they're in jail, or whatever.
hmm
But the fact of the matter is you're letting this person miles away from you still have power over you,
right,
having, living rent free in your head, keeping you from doing whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing or that you want to do.
exactly. And two, it's when somebody does something, and let's say you got yourself into a situation, and you're like shit, and like
Hmm.
bad, it went off the rails. You're like, oh shit. Don't
Hmm.
repeat the same thing again with another situation.
Exactly. Yes.
It, it's it, you have to recognize, okay, that didn't work for a reason. So you have to look at why it didn't work. Not because that person's an asshole or because maybe you didn't have what it took for, let's say, a job interview. The point is that maybe that wasn't where you're supposed to be, and there's a reason for it. Everything does
Hmm.
have a reason. It just we're not aware of them for a while, and then when we sit back and look at it, we're like, oh, that explains that. At the
Hmm.
time, I felt so terrible, but now I get it. So you don't repeat the same mistake, or don't keep doing the same damn thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. It's not
Hmm.
gonna
Yeah.
happen.
The definition of insanity.
Yeah,
Doing the
yeah,
same thing over and over, expecting different results.
right. And it's kind of like what right now, like being on social media, I've been like keeping a low profile because of too much shenanigans. Like I've stayed off my Facebook completely for months, and I've been all the better for it,
Oh
honestly.
gosh, my personal Facebook profile, I have to log in there from like time to time. Like like it's like, did you see what so and so posted on Facebook? My parents would say. I
Right,
was like, Mom, Dad, I don't get on Facebook much. Now I get on my Facebook as Brion the Observer, from time to time, but even that is abysmal,
right,
because I keep my online profile. It's not like I'm trying to like 100% hide who I am so I won't dox myself. Mostly it's because my last name is hard to pronounce for some people, and I don't like it being mispronounced.
right, right. I get it. I dig what you're laying down. Yeah,
Mm,
I don't go on. I think I use Messenger more, and even that's limited because it was like I had to kind of just take a step back from it. I was like, this is just there was so much bullshit going on, and
Hmm.
honestly for a while there, this sounds really terrible, but I was getting exhausted with seeing like somebody has cancer, somebody's dying, someone died,
Yeah.
um, or just a lot of that kind of shit, and then people losing their mind over Trump constantly.
Hmm.
And I don't care, but I don't. At the same time, it's like I don't want to have that in my head either. So I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. And I it's not that I'm unfeeling or empathetic to those who are, have a loved one that's either passed or is, sick or whatever, but it was just nonstop. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, I can't do this. And if it
I
wasn't a
mean,
person, it was a fucking animal. And then they're talking and they're doing diary entries. And I'm like, listen, the world is so lonely. This is what I had to like think when I look at it. I'm like, look
no
how
one,
lonely people are.
no one wants to watch a 24/7 Sarah McLachlan commercial.
Exactly. It's honestly true. There's just too much. So I've stayed off of that, but on Twitter, you get the other crap on there. It's a little
Hmm.
less aggressive, but the Rise
It,
of
it, it,
Skywalker shit that's going
yeah,
on.
it can get aggressive, but then sometimes, that can be avoided.
It could be avoided by not instigating it.
Yes, it can, and I found it very helpful. It is not. I mean, sometimes I used to instigate. It was like, you know what? Ever since I stopped instigate, I felt so much better.
Yeah,
It's like no one's bothering me, no one's doing anything.
yeah, and it's like I look at it like this. It's like some people are going to be a nuisance. Like they're
Hmm.
bad. They're bad news. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, okay, that person's bad news, and you just go, what did I used to do with these people before? Oh yeah, I ignore them because I knew they'd
Hmm.
fuck themselves, and they always do. You don't have to do a thing for them; they just do it to
The be
themselves.
the best part is even though you might really want to say something
Mm-hmm.
and give them a piece of your mind or make fun of them, give it 5 minutes, and someone that follows you or within the same circles will already have done that.
Yeah,
And so I learned that it's like, you know what? I'm gonna let others do the work. You know?
exactly. Because in the
You know.
end, you know, these people are going to keep doing what they do. Now, if somebody is coming from a place of um being superficial,
Hmm.
or lack of better words, like they're just going through the motions for the clicks, whatever, or
Right.
clout, or whatever they perceive
Oh yeah.
the benefit of what they're doing, they'll fuck themselves, and they usually do.
Exactly. Yeah, they do all the
And
time.
there's some like I ignore it, if I get irritated or done, I just stop. I just stop. I take a step back, and it's either myself I'm annoyed at or the other person, and because it's not worth getting into a Twitter spat over bullshit. And some people live in their own bullshit circles and their own bullshit. What do you call it? Bubbles.
Mhm. Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's like I was telling you before you hit the record button was, you know, it's
Hmm.
we sit there and we focus on this stuff, yet there's other stuff to worry about,
Hmm.
and I'm just gonna say this, it's just a comic book, it's just a movie, it's just a TV show. At the end of the day, there's other things that matter
Right.
more. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's your entertainment, yeah, it's your escapism.
And
But
there's a value in escapism,
oh yeah.
but I think I agree, we have too much of it.
Hmm.
And when it's kind of a sad thing in a lot of ways, because if you think about it, it's like what used to be adventures and people doing things like literally getting on a boat and going across the ocean and discovering
Hmm.
new places or traveling the world, they're replacing it with going to the movies or going to a football game. And
Right.
they're not really experiencing life, and they're losing a little bit of that, I don't know, I would say human
Prime
expectancy of excitement and
primal
adventure.
primal instincts.
Yeah, that's why in my opinion, we have a lot more feminized males,
Oh
and
gosh, yeah.
that's one of my opinions. I mean, I'm like, I was talking to a friend of mine who recently had a child, and her spouse. He's not a very man's man. That's fine. It is what it is. Um, but there was an incident that happened, and he kind of needed to step up as a husband and father, and he did not do that. Instead,
Ooh.
he took a step back, like a coward, and that's lack of better words, but it's true. And
Mhm.
I asked her, I said, "Well, did you talk to him about it?" And she's like, "Yeah, but basically he didn't want to be a man. It was like he was, and it wasn't because of feminism. This was him. This was how he was. It could have been his family life. It could be numerous things, but he just wasn't stepping up where he should have. And it wasn't something that she expected. She just assumed that he would because it was a threat, you know,
Mm.
to the child and to her. And he didn't do what
Yeah.
he was supposed to do. And I said, well, that's sad. And I told her, I said, it's very sad. Maybe that's something they should go to therapy for. Because he needs to reclaim some kind of empowerment as a male. And I
Mhm.
think the same goes for women too. They need to reclaim it's okay to be feminine, and strong and be well-rounded, a
Mhm.
well-rounded individual. Men and women can do that. Um, but it's just a really sad change I've noticed where there's very few.
The problem is one. I mean, if you remember, um, growing up,
Hmm.
we were always taught, to be somewhat confident, to like, join some sports, get rough a little bit,
Right,
or do something, you know, and maybe learn a martial art or whatever. We were always told to get out there, get dirty, and play.
right,
And even that, even at the lowest levels, that does teach you a little bit of how to protect your body when you get hurt, how not to get hurt by
right.
getting hurt,
Hmm.
and all this other stuff. And what we have now is is saying, "Oh no, everybody gets a trophy. Oh no, you're fat. You don't have to do PE and all this other stuff." And so we teach our young people that there should be no violence of any kind, which
Hmm.
it'd be nice if that's the case, but let's be
Humans are
honest.
humans.
Are humans, they want to conquer, they want to take control, they want to be the one on top, and me being as an adult male, full grown adult male, I am only 5'3" and a quarter. Okay, I'm
Hmm.
not that tall. Now, growing up in school, you could imagine I was very small. What did I do? I had to learn to fight dirty, and I
Hmm.
lifted weights, and I could power lift okay. But yeah, I had to do something to where it comes to the fact that you know bullies are like, predators. They'll go for the easy prey. And if you fight back, they're not going to want to
Mess with you.
mess with you. And so that's what I learned very quickly. And so, it served me well, and it serves me well today sometimes because I do get passed up for things based upon my size and my laid back demeanor. So it's
Right,
like, and so yeah, is that type of excuse me? And so if I
right.
want to scare somebody, I just wear a suit, and that's very scary to people. That's why I don't wear suits.
And honestly, it's like, you know, with with how men compete now, it's so different than when I was younger. Like, I mean, with each other, it's now it's like about money and influence, and
Hmm.
it's more so about that than it is about physical strength. Even though it's vanity based more now, I would say. Guys do talk amongst themselves about, like, yeah, I can power lift this or that, but I'm talking about like
Hmm.
the competitive group. You know,
Right.
those idiots that I don't know, they're metrosexual, you know, wine drinking pansies, and like I don't know what else to call them, dude. And like
Oh.
I remember one time I went with a friend of mine, and I was the third wheeled. I was like there, just I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go because
Hmm.
they didn't serve beer. It was one of those places.
Oh yeah.
It was only
I want a
wine
beer.
and like wine cooler bullshit. And
No
they had
beer.
no beer. Yeah,
What
I've
about
never.
liquor? Was there any liquor?
No, hardly any. Like it wasn't even mixed drinks. It was a wine Zima bar. It was like one of those types of assholes, you know.
Those exist?
Oh my God, they do. And it was so uppity and it was just beyond me. So we go in and I'm pissed because there's no beer. And I didn't want to be there, you know. And I had been to
Hmm.
one other of these places before, so I already knew there wasn't beer. But I asked anyway, and of course they're like, "No, but we have this nice Chardonnay." I'm like, "No, this is gonna suck," you know. So we're just hanging out, and the guys that were approaching, I I felt like I could hurt them. Does that make sense? Like I shouldn't feel like I, and
It
I'm like five
does.
foot tall. What am I gonna do? You know, like, but I didn't. I felt like these weren't. These were like little boys pretending to be men,
Mm.
if that makes sense. So they were
Yeah,
built and they were oiled up, looking nasty, but they were all wearing like suits and they were trying to be something they weren't, and they were not alpha at all. It was
oh
like it
gosh.
was not that way at all, and I was just like, I need to go. I need to go now. I told him
Yeah.
like this ain't right. This is some kind of pure hell. The bouncer has more fucking balls than half the fucking men in here. Like I didn't know what to do.
Wow.
You know, it was really bizarre, but you know, I and after that I stayed the hell away from those places. Um, when you
I
get,
think
you know,
I
go
th
ahead.
I really do think that is people being carbon copies of what they see on TV and in movies and in the media,
Mhm.
mostly TV and mostly in the media. And that's the problem is no one dares to be an individual. No one dares to think for themselves anymore. Yeah, there's a lot of people I admire and there's a lot of people I respect, but do I want to be like them? Not in the slightest,
Right.
you know? I mean, because I know they are different than me.
Mhm.
You know, I have my physical flaws and my mental flaws, but I have my strengths as well, and they're different than yours. They're different than someone else's, and so on and
Mhm.
so on. And so, you know, I got to use my strengths to my ability, you know?
Right. And I mean,
Eh,
when you, I don't know, like, I don't know if you've, I guess, had this experience yet, but as time goes on, have you been encountering more and more people? I would say, I mean, we already know this on social media, but I'm talking in real life. So this is like the important part here. In real life, do you are you coming across more and more of the beta mentality in people, like meaning deep down, bullshit aside type of thing, you know, after the puffing, the huffing, and this
mhm.
is in general. Have you noticed that a lot of these individuals are more, I guess, groupthink and beta, or do you think that they're just plain lost and they don't know what roles they should be playing?
A combination of both. I mean, I have seen some that are groupthink and beta, but as far as people that I know personally, just kind of lost and just trying to possibly either mimic or kind of a self-denial, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but every now and then their true interests will come out, you know? It's like, oh, this I'm going to this weekend because I'm into this. It's like, yeah, be that. You know, yeah, if you're into that, be that, you know. Don't go do something because the media tells you to, you
Right.
know. It's like this is it's this kind of brainwashing, it's mass brainwashing, predictive programming, whatever you want to call it. It is it's stripping away individuality, it's stripping away individualism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I get upset about. And I see that, you know, I see that sometimes even in even our circles, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like
There's a lot of what do you call it? Social.
everybody's everybody's doing the same thing. It's
There's a lot
everybody
of
making the same video.
there's a lot of social engineering, and
Social
it's
engineering and they don't know it.
yeah, and it's so prevalent that it it's it's swept into real life. You know, as far as behavior and it was sad. I was listening and over the last few years, just kind of catching lectures online or you know different documentaries about just the changing, I guess, landscape in workplaces and corporate environments and things like that. And
Hmm.
it's become like normal now that employees specifically, and this is what they were saying in several of these things was the quote millennial generation, that several of the millennial employees, it's part of their training now that basically they have to babysit these employees through simple tasks, meaning,
Oh yeah, gosh.
can you please go do this? Well, I don't know how, you know, I was in a corporate environment early, early on, um, because I'm kind of on the zennial border, so that's where I'm at age wise. So I grew up with millennials, but I was a latchkey kid, so I kind of
Mm,
had a bit of both of everybody. But one thing my old corporate job, they'd say to you, "Oh, okay, well, your responsibility is, file these or do this or, process this." And I used to do loan processing and different crap like that. So I'd be proactive on the files, meaning I'd go and check the other files to see what else needed to be done. Well, now in the same position, they're having to babysit somebody instead of them being proactive. That person will stop at the first task and not move on to another. And I'm like,
hmm.
whoa. I'm like, really? I would have
Wow.
been canned. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Golly.
I mean,
I mean,
it's different.
I don't understand that. And yeah, the same way. I mean, I guess theoretically, I guess technically I'm a millennial, but you know,
Well, it's
I was born in the early mid '80s.
oh,
So and I had an older brother and an older sister, and it's like when I see these videos of these people not be able to operate you know, a tape deck,
oh,
I
yeah.
get sad. I get sad. It's like, you know what? I mean, that made me want to go out and find an old VCR, an old cassette deck, and just record stuff onto it, just for the fact that, hey, you know what? When there's a mass computer crash, I got the documentation. I know how to work it. You don't.
This Commodore 64 will come in handy at the end times.
Yeah, you see this cord that comes out of the wall into this kind of brick thing with numbers with this little handheld thing. Yeah, that's how he called people.
It's true. Like it's it's very different in that I feel like the millennial generation saw so many different changes in technology so rapidly
Oh yeah.
that you have people who grew up with having regular landlines and pagers or beepers to people that have never even seen a beeper, much
Oh
less a
gosh, yeah, I
landline.
remember beepers. Yes.
And I mean these were, I mean I my
As
first phone,
short-lived as beepers were, I remember them.
right. I mean these were all little segments of time because I remember the beeper phase was like, in my opinion, was short, you know,
Very short.
and then all of a sudden it was like Nokia phones, Motorola,
Hmm.
things like that. And it was just like, oh shit, we have this technology now, and having a home computer became less expensive and more consumer driven, and everybody had more, access.
Hmm.
Whereas before, you'd have to go to a library or a friend's house.
Yeah, and then like, the whole texting thing when it first started,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like who in their right mind would want to do that? And then even as it progressed, it's like still it wasn't where it's at now. Even now, I'm like, why doesn't you just want to call? It's like I want to text. I want to text like, um, hello, I could call you. We could get this done quickly, very quickly. You know,
And I think that's added into that, like, what do you call it? Like lack of conversational skills.
exactly. And
Oh
I
my
and I
god.
it frustrates me to no end. It does. I mean, and let's put it this way. I mean, is a I mean, I don't mind sharing this. Okay, so what I did for a living for a very long time,
Hmm.
pretty much kept me from, going out and meeting people. And this I was a single man, and so I was like, okay, online dating. All right, fine, yeah, I'll do it. So
Hmm.
profile, whatever. And I said, okay, yeah, and so and not and a few different girls like, oh, here's my number, blah blah blah, you want to text? I was like, I don't text, just call. It's like I feel more comfortable texting. It's like, well, we're kind of texting here if you think about it. It's like I got things to do. I got whatever.
Right.
I can't be wasting my time with this sort of like high school crap. It's like
That's how. Yeah, I agree with that. Because the texting thing is, I don't mind it, but it's annoying.
hmm.
Because I don't like having. I hate having a phone on me at all times. I don't like being found. I would much rather, like,
Me
even when I
neither.
had my Nokia, like that thing had a piece of shit like lifespan, so it was always on the charger in another room. And
Hmm.
I don't like not I like to not be found. Like you know,
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
like
yeah.
that
You.
feeling of like, oh, yeah, well, Squirrel's not answering her text messages. I've been texting her for God knows how long because I don't stay attached to it. I might, if I'm on the computer, yeah, I'll have Twitter up or I'll have like my messenger up in the background, but I'm doing other crap. I don't like feeling stuck to a phone. It bothers me. So that's why text
Hmm.
messaging is such a pain in the ass. I'm like, oh
Oh,
my
it is. I hate it. I actually like conversation a lot better because I could say what's on my mind. I could say what I need, especially if it's to get business done.
right,
You know, I hate email. I hate sending DMs just because I prefer the conversation. I prefer a one-on-one conversation. I could say what I need to say, and we're done, and
right,
I could go on with my day.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Because there's so much I get like that too. I don't I just bitched about this recently because if like certain days, especially I have a lot of family. I where we live, I most people know we live in Texas, but
Hmm.
I don't have any family in the state. So all of my
Right.
family is scattered all over the place. And so time zones, trying to figure out what the hell time it is where people are calling and or texting from, and texting helps in that way. You know,
Hmm.
that's the only thing I've been like seeing it as beneficial, and even that I hate texting. But that's the only benefit I see is like, oh, if someone's in a different time zone, I can leave them a message basically with them being able to see it right away.
Now, texting does work for me just a little bit if it is one of those things where I get a text from my wife saying, "Hey, can you pick up this?"
Oh yeah. Mhm.
That helps.
Oh, it's nice because then you get a list, or if some photographs. That's the other thing I
Hmm.
like. That's cool. Like I like the whole idea of like this, well, Star Trek technology in a sense, where you're able to do a video call on your phone, or you can just send a photograph of something to someone no matter where they're at in the world.
Hmm.
It blows my mind. I'm like, damn, this is amazing stuff. And people, what we do with it is we make memes.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh gosh, the memes.
Ah,
Tons and tons of memes I've seen. I've made a few myself, but I'll tell you something about that. It gets addicting after a while.
oh yeah.
Don't do memes.
Oh yeah, you can spend
La
hours. I
Oh
collect them.
yes.
I collect them all the time. I'm like, oh, that's good. I'll save that. I have like a meme file, and I,
You should have I mean, here's an idea. You should launch an Indiegogo and you should say meme trading cards.
oh, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I swear, there's so many good memes. But yeah, it's, but we have all of this technology now, and it's like, my
Hmm.
God, I remember like when this stuff was not well affordable at all.
Hmm.
It was so expensive, and like my first computer I built, well, the one I got, and then after that, it was like because I only do PC gaming, and I've always stayed on PC, and so when the prices on the upgrades started to lower down, like on video cards and graphics cards, I was like, in memory, I was like, oh shit, something's changed, you know.
Hmm.
And going from spending all this money to very little and still having room to purchase other stuff for the computer, knowing because most people don't build their computers, they just they go and buy like a prepackaged deal,
Hmm.
manufacture stuff. But to me, that was such a big jump in technology. I was like, oh my god, the costs and savings here, and then the access, having all this internet to be able to access so much more stuff. You're like, oh my god, like if you're looking for some rare book, you can easily find it now. Or if you're looking for a soundtrack or music, you can find these things eventually. Given time or the patience, you can find these things that are like you thought was unattainable, you know.
Right.
And
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
it's
you
amazing.
could put a lot of work into it. I mean, sometimes there are stuff that is very, very hard to find, depending
Mhm.
on what you're looking for.
Mhm.
But it is easier now than it was, let's say, 20 years ago when all we had was a phone book,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
and uh, and maybe we knew a guy, or maybe our friend knew a guy,
Right. You'd have to go and
and
ask around. Be
and
like,
you have to go to all these obscure bookstores.
yep. Yep.
and you're afraid that when you leave said bookstore, something followed you home that wasn't supposed to.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's a lot of to me. There's a lot of stuff that you know, uh, with all of this change in our society, I've noticed that there's transitions we go through. It's like I don't know what the theme is for this generational shift right
Oh, I
now.
know exactly what the theme is,
What do you
and
think it is?
no. Check this out. I mean, it's not as good as the original, but you can see where the trend's going. Right now, we're coming off of a pseudo 80s kick. The next line of progression would be a pseudo 90s kick. So
Right.
if you're going to do anything marketing wise,
Oh well, yeah.
maybe look into that because that's exactly what's going to happen because you had the 80s kids now in charge. Now next is going to be the 90s kids that are now going to be in or will be in charge. So
Well,
as far
yeah.
as branding as marketing, that's probably what you might want to take advantage of.
Well, I think. Well, yeah. That's a given.
Yeah.
Because with the boomers, it was in the 80s. What we had to deal with was a lot of our 1950s and 60s throwbacks, and everybody, whether they were at Woodstock or not, wanting to relive it, and that's what we're dealing
Hmm.
with right now is the that population taking their exit, whether it's quietly, which I they're not.
They're not.
They're death rattling the wheels, saying you can't have it yet. I'm not.
Hmm.
I'm not gone, and that's what we're seeing with that. But it's weird because as far as how generationally each generation has treated each other, I had started a small expose on this, but I haven't finished it yet, and I probably won't finish it because I think it's going to tie into other stuff I'm doing anyway. But back in the 80s into the early 90s, the boom with nursing facilities was like at an all-time high because of the Greatest Generation and silent some of
Hmm.
the silent passing away or getting older, right?
Oh yeah.
So their parents, or excuse me, the parents are getting put into these places by their baby boomer kids,
Hmm.
and it was all under the promises that a lot of these facilities were quote better, which is all bullshit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We found that out the hard way.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so now we have a lot of aging boomers who can't afford these facilities because they're highly fucking outrageously expensive.
Yeah.
And a lot
And
of
you
them,
get and a lot of their kids, um, not really the boomers' kids, but they're I guess the millennials or whoever's footing the bill for them is gonna have a hard time.
I'd say it's a nice slice of Xers and a big slice of boomers, or excuse me, millennials that
Oh
are
yeah.
that are their children. I think the there's this natural progression with age, right? Where you have a natural cycle of aging, where you age gracefully.
Hmm.
And a lot of that aging gracefully, I wouldn't say all of it, but a good portion of it was robbed of the greatest generation, even though they were at least comfortably in facilities or comfortably put into like a rest home or an adult living space.
Hmm.
Whereas now we have the boomers who don't have the backup plan.
No, they don't.
I mean,
I
with
mean,
the housing
it's
crisis and all that shit, it
it,
totally
it
took a chunk.
it's yeah, it's a big problem. Um, and I want to say a lot of it stems from you know the lie is saying, oh, you do this, you're gonna get this, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they bought in it hook, line, and sinker. And I want to say that the worst thing ever invented, and I know people probably gonna not the worst thing, but one of the worst things people are gonna get mad at me for saying this is the concept of timeshare.
Oh yeah.
That's just renting
Well, just
and not even good renting.
exactly, exactly. It, the I think the problem is you had what all these boomers, very large generation of baby boomers that were given opportunities and they had mentorship and they had all this guidance as well as the funds to do these things. They chose to go, a lot of women went back to work, um,
Mhm.
had children late in life. That's why we have so many millennials. Um, and now we have a lot of divorced families, a lot of broken families, a lot of single
Mhm.
parents that came out of that generation. And then they were the generation that said you should question authority and you should
Yeah.
be against, this and that and whatever, and this is bad and that is bad. And, we're children of the 60s, or we're vicariously living through the children of the 60s.
Try questioning authority now.
Exactly. Now the same assholes who are telling you to question authority are in charge. They don't want to be questioned and they don't want to
Mhm.
let go of the wheel. And they're having a difficult time passing this, I guess, inheritance down to their children because it's a form of narcissism. And they can't let go because they still want to be in control, but instead of mentoring young people or mentoring the right people, and this isn't for all of them, okay, this is just a
Mhm.
chunk,
Yeah.
a good chunk that has unfortunately a lot of influence, but they aren't giving mentorship the proper way. Instead, they're rewarding all behavior because they just want their children to think that their shit doesn't stink. But this
Mhm.
is why things like, in pop culture, this is, to tie this together because that's where it shows up. The best example is why Star Wars sucks, or why the scripts suck, is because we have boomers who are not stepping away, not mentoring properly, and
Mhm.
not permitting the right people in those positions, but instead handing it to the people that look good for them.
Yeah, and those people, and I've said this before on other streams, when it comes to things like Star Wars and comic books or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it's best to hand the reins over to someone that really loves the IP, that really wants to take
Mm-hmm.
care of it. Now, when you start doing it the whole corporate way, people see through that, and if they see that the you're disingenuous and they don't want it.
Correct.
And so that's the problem that a lot of us have, that that we've been talking about, but they've been harped at us. And my message to any, let's say boomer out there that's not wanting to relinquish stuff, and wants to hold on to everything and just wants to hire the people that looks good for them, I'm gonna say this: you can't take it with you.
Mm-hmm.
You
Oh man.
can't take it with you, and that is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And if I ever find, and I believe I will, that avenue to success, I'm going to tell as many people as I can. Well, maybe not, depends. But you know what I mean? I'm going to be a little bit more fancy free with it,
Mm-hmm.
you know? I mean, it's like, oh yeah, keep it to yourself, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, depends. Depends on what it is.
Right. And there's a lot of that, when it's putting people in these positions that make them look good. This also applies to handing it to their children or, through that good old boy network of
Mm-hmm.
thinking like someone is owed. Well, that's my kid, osmosis and shit. Um, when it comes to like Lawrence Kasdan's son,
Mm-hmm.
um, who I think he did Solo, and he just thought he was just the best thing ever, and it's the shittiest writing. And you're like, listen, a good writer or artist or whatever the hell you're working in, it takes time. It's not something that just immediately happens, and I understand that. But if you are trying to work through a major motion picture, that's very different than an indie film or
Mm-hmm.
something coming out of film school where your budget is cut and reduced because you need time to work on your abilities, not just be handed something on a golden platter. So there's a lot of that favoritism and this desire for influence and money and all this bullshit stuff that you cannot take with you, and I think there's this fear of mortality with the
Oh
boomers,
yeah, big time.
that affects all of this. And like, I know quite a few wonderful people who are in the baby boomer category. They're not all jerks, okay? That's
Oh yeah.
not at all what I'm saying, or nor you. You know, it's just that there is a problem though with quite a few people who are just so desperate to cling to things that are no longer theirs, that their parents, and there's some asshole, greatest generation people too. Obviously, otherwise a lot of their kids wouldn't be the hell of a mess that they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. The point is, though, there was still a handing off of generation to generation in an appropriate way, and doing it with respect and dignity to not just yourself, but to those you're assisting, because you're keeping your own legacy there long term, as opposed to just handing something out to someone. And it's like, there's a lot more ageism now that
Oh,
I
big time. Oh
I
gosh.
had no clue it was this fucking. I mean, I'm dumb. I try to
It
think optimistically
it's
on things.
it's bad. It's bad. And I'm gonna say that people like you and I are caught in the middle of that.
Man, now have you had some experiences with this ageism shit?
We're
Because,
too young and we're too old at the same time.
right, I didn't. Honestly, I started noticing it at 35.
Mm.
And I was like, what the fuck? And, they call your 30s middle age, which I'm like,
Mm. Oh gosh. Oh,
okay.
oh dang, we're middle aged.
I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Does that mean like middle age? Oh no, you're halfway in the fucking grave. I don't know what the hell that
No,
means.
I thought middle age was 45, 40 or 45.
Right. That's what I always
That's
thought. But
uh,
but they still refer to your 30s as middle age, and I'm like, okay, whatever, that's fine. But the ageism, I just started to figure this out, like, I guess within the last few years. Like, this was what the case was
mhm.
of, especially if you're job hunting or you're applying for something. The age, like, that was the deciding factor. Even if you look younger, it doesn't matter. It's what's on paper.
Yeah,
And
you never want to put down when you graduated,
mm-hmm.
you know.
And unfortunately, they can still find that shit if they do a background check.
Yeah.
So you're fucked either way. And but it didn't click with me that that was an issue. But it's starting. I was talking to one of my friends. She's 34 and she's very well educated, and has had a quite a bit of work under her belt. But she cannot
Hmm.
get the hell out of that job. She wants to move into something else,
Right.
and it was because of her age. She's 34. She's about to turn 35, and they're treating her like she's 50, 60 years old, you know, and like she's, somehow she's ancient. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, and even 50 isn't that like old. That's not old. Old to me is like 85. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
I mean,
that's
yeah,
old.
well, old to me is when you're, I'm gonna say maybe halfway through your 60s,
Mhm.
you know, but
That's fine.
still,
But
yeah.
it's this, but the ageism. I don't know if you've had many experiences with that
I've
yet.
had, I mean, I've had issues with ageism, and I've had issues with with people not wanting to get back with me because of my resume. And it's like, okay, okay, now if you want to sit there and call me up and tell me that you don't want to give me the job because you're afraid that you're not going to be able to offer me what I'm worth, that's fine. You know,
Right.
maybe we can don't even, I mean, they don't even want to call me up to negotiate, you
Mhm.
know. That's, I mean, to me that's cowardice. I mean, because when
I
I get
agree.
a, I mean, even if they don't call me at all, I'm fine with that. But when they send an email and say, "I'm sorry, you're not the right fit," blah 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 blah, and I'm like, you know what? My resume is better than yours,
Mhm.
probably, and
Mhm.
you're afraid. And so, and I, one time I actually wrote back. I was like, people told me that how much of a crappy company you were. I believe them, so I said some really nasty four-letter words, which I don't really say that much, but yeah, I was like, that's the first time I was okay with burning a bridge,
Yeah.
and I was just like, I actually poured gas on that and lit it on
You're like,
fire.
fuck it.
And I called up some of my colleagues like, yeah, guess what I just did? You did what? It's like, yeah. It's like, yeah, it's okay because it's not going to hurt your career at all.
Right. And a lot of these companies, it's like, you know, I didn't expect it. I guess that's it blindsided me because I really didn't think that this was an issue.
Yeah, I
And
mean, and you don't really think about it because especially when you're in your 30s.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think about you don't really think about how the time has went, and you still feel like you're in your 20s somehow.
Right.
And then one day you realize, hey, I'm in my mid 30s, and
Mm-hmm.
okay. And it's like, and then they look at the paper. It's like, oh yeah, you're in your mid 30s, so no job for you.
Right. And that was the part that like stunned me because like in the beginning I had a recruiter contact me and she was interested, in my portfolio and all this stuff. So I sent everything over and she invited me to go ahead and fill out all the other stuff, like the background check and just the regular application bullshit they do. And so I did that. And I had been everything was fine because she had saw my contact info on LinkedIn or something like that.
Hmm.
So when my photo was on there and all that other shit. And so when she, everything was fine until that application went in. And I was
Hmm.
like really like confused and then I thought about it and I did call her and I did speak to her briefly and she without saying it she alluded to it was my age without saying it.
Wow.
And I went fuck. Like really? Like I didn't say fuck, but I should have. Um, but she was. I understood, and to a point. I mean, what the hell do you say? You're just like, well, fuck you very much. Have a nice day. Like, I mean, what do you say? Like, oh no, gosh darn it, I wish I had that time machine. Like, fuck this shit.
Hmm.
So it was that moment though. I had no idea that that was what was going on. I just figured, well, I hadn't been in a formal corporate environment for a while because we have a special needs child, so I've been at home with him, and he's getting older, so this was like a gig I was going to be able to do from home and all this other shit, and it was just it blew my mind, and I started researching it, like what the hell's going on with this ageism, and then I started seeing article after article and it was all talking about like the ageism starts as early as the early 30s to mid 30s now,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, how the fuck am I ever going to
It,
get a job,
it's yeah, it's an easy way to offer people less money to take a job.
And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, who is the hiring mass? Is it the boomers? Is it the Xers? Who the fuck is hiring or deciding this? You know what I mean? Like, who in corporate said, well, we're going to deal with these high needs people groups, whatever those groups are, based on what I've read about the issues with, quote, millennial driven workplaces. I say that in quotes. Um, how is it that they're going to be micromanaging other employees, but yet they won't do someone who's, or help someone, or hire someone rather, that is a self starter, that
Right.
is proactive and good with people and has conversational skills, as an example. Like, it's beyond me. Like I didn't
Hmm.
understand this, and it was all about just the age. It's like who the hell is the hiring mass? Who do you think those people are? What generation? What? Who are
I've
these
always
people?
I've always felt like, and I know I'm not playing the victim card, and I'm not doing that mentality, but I always felt like, you know, um, throughout a lot of parts of my life, I got the short end of my stick. Oh, you're too young to get this job,
Yeah, I've
and
heard that.
then you're too old to get this job.
Yep, that one's
It's
new to me
like
now. Yep.
oh gosh, it's like what. I mean, I just remember going through public school. You know how like at certain grades, this class would take a certain field trip to this really awesome place.
Mhm.
And it's like I was always the class like, oh well, this year we don't have the budget. This year we don't have the budget. You know, it's like,
Right.
dadgummit. It's like, you
There's
know,
gotta be something's gotta give.
something's gotta give. It's like, I mean,
Because
my disdain for the for bureaucracy began at an early age.
now, Brian,
Hmm.
do you have any kids, or is it just you and your Mrs.
It's
Observer?
me. It's me, Mrs. the Observer, and a kitty cat.
Okay. Now, this is something that I've noticed, like, because like I said, I went to school with a lot of um, millennials, and it, like it is, I don't care about it, but they a lot of the beliefs that they have about having kids are
Hmm.
very different than
Yeah.
my own, and that became clear as I got older. I was like, wow, okay. I mean, I have friends that are now 41. They're older than me, but they're like 41, 42, having their first kid.
Right.
And I'm like, ooh, are you gonna have more than one? And they're like, well, yeah, probably. I'm like, good idea, do that,
Hmm.
because don't leave your child alone. You
Right.
know, because the truth is, you're not gonna live forever. You know,
Hmm.
that's the advice I give to anybody who wants to have children in their 40s. Have two. You know, that way they have each other, because it's not fair to one child to have to bury their parents. I'm being honest.
Right.
It's not fair to that child. You know,
No, it's not.
it isn't. And as one who's done that, it is not fun, because there was an age gap in my family. My grandmother had my mom when she was 40. So, like, my aunt and everybody, like in their 80s, like everyone's ages are like, as people have since passed and things like that. But I reiterate this a lot about, having kids. It's just like, have to. If you're going to have kids later in life, please, God, it's like when you see celebrities who are in their 70s having their first kid. I'm like, what are you doing? You know?
Right.
Um, that way they have somebody there with them. They have a family member. They have a little fulfillment. They can grow their own family if they choose to, if they don't, but at least they have someone with them, you know,
Hmm.
because it's a lot of pressure on younger people. And I have a lot of friends that are quite younger, even, uh, like I have siblings that are in their one's 30, they're half siblings. So I didn't
Hmm.
grow up with them, but they're both in their early 30s now. They just hit 30 and 31. And, you know, like they're in that age group though. And I know people that are around 30, 31, and they had to bury their parents by the time they were 28.
Oh.
And that was rough because they were conceived later in life, and things like that. And two of them did not have siblings. So they were having to deal with all of it on their own, which is a lot to deal with alone. But just a normal day to day, not even, how do you say this? Just dealing with death in general is difficult, but to go through it alone with no other family because of the way that family structuring has changed so much. We don't have the closeness of families. Like, I was close to my grandparents, but not everybody was, you know.
Hmm.
So there's not a lot of support for people, and you don't want that child to have to deal with all of that by themselves and not have the life skills, one, or two, not have the support system that they need to get through that. And it's a very rough patch. So I know several people that are caregivers for their parents full time, and they're in their mid 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing. I mean, I have an older brother and sister. I'm the youngest.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my parents, they actually had to move in with my grandmother just recently because she
Mm.
cannot see. Um,
Oh, that's rough.
and knowing my grandma, I mean, my grandmother, mules will go to her for stubborn lessons. She she handed over the keys to my dad.
Oh God.
So, you know,
Then you know it's bad when she's finally said, okay, I'm done.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's good that she is still. How old is your grandma?
She'll be 90,
Oh wow.
90 on Saturday.
Well, happy birthday to grandma. That's huge.
Hmm.
Man, it's such a gift. I mean, did you grow up with your grandparents in your life, or was it one of those?
Yes,
That's
yes. I
great.
mean, yeah. I mean, my on my mom's side, my grandfather on my mom's side died when I was like 4, and he
Mm.
died of colon cancer.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry.
but I do have fond memories of him. He's a nice guy.
Mhm.
You know, but just I mean, to put it in perspective, think about Andy Taylor from Andy Griffith,
Oh.
and cross between him and Ronald Reagan. So
Oh
that
wow.
was, yeah.
Okay.
So, but other than that, my grandmother, my mom's side, she lived. I want to say she passed away in. I want to say um, early 2013.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So she passed away then. Um, my grandparents on my dad's side. Uh, well, I barely knew my grandfather on my dad's side, and that's a whole nother issue.
Mhm.
But her husband, we called him Grandpa,
Right.
and he lived. Well, he died in '97.
Oh, okay.
Um, and she's still kicking.
Man.
She's got macular degeneration. She's still kicking. She gets up. She does her walks every day. Now she kind of can't.
Mhm.
Um, she likes to watch her game shows, which
Yeah.
every night at 7, The Wheel and Jeopardy,
Yep.
that
Yep.
block,
Yep.
every night, always has been,
Yep.
always has been. And so the problem is, even though she can't see, she just cranks up the TV very
Of
loud.
course. Mhm.
She used to love to read, um, but we were trying to get her stuff like book on tape, and she just throws the biggest fit ever. And I think it has to do with maybe she doesn't want to wear headphones or something. I don't know.
Right.
Um, but she, you start talking about movies like, "Oh, I don't watch movies." And it's like, okay, grandma, what else is new? But no, no, she's cool.
Yeah,
Um,
they're a gift. I mean, it not all grandparents are great. Some people do have rough relationships or maybe they didn't know them. That's a big one.
learn some really good culinary skills from grandma.
Mhm.
Yeah, and from my dad too. And it's just kind of it's just come out of the womb knowing how to cook for some reason. I don't know.
It's important. Those are those little tools they give you generationally, and
Hmm.
the stories and things like that are important. And it's like one of the things my mom had done before she passed. Like she was really heavy into genealogy, and I was like, man, you got problems, because she was obsessed with this shit, and it was like she was doing Indiana Jones kind of shit, finding stuff, and because of before like ancestry really took off, right? And so she was gathering information, talking to family, stuff like that. And so when she passed away, I picked up where she left off, and just like redid the tree, cleaned everything up because we had way more resources that had come on. Knew this and knew that. I highly recommend this. Just for anybody. I mean, it is true.
Yeah,
Um,
my mom's in the genealogy as
okay,
well.
yeah, it is one of the best things you can give to your kids in a lot of ways. It's one of those things where I was piecing. I have brick walls in my tree, um, but there's certain things in there, like especially if you still have a living generation, like a grandparent. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, so it was like I heard endless stuff all the time because it was just the way it was. But each one of those things was like I was very lucky because I got to a place in my relationship with my grandmother where we became friends, and it took a long time. Obviously, you have to grow up and all these things. But I'd had my first son when I was young when I had him, but she was exceptionally helpful in just little things, like little things here and there, and explaining little life lessons, and those are important. I think whether that's from a male or a female grandparent, it is to have that connection with them because it kind of I don't know it builds this really beautiful picture of who you are as a person, who your future generations will be, in a sense what they're going to be carrying with them, and the traits like personality traits and very I believe those things can be genetic in some weird ways. Sometimes it's just something you acquire from knowing the person, but it's interesting. So like when I picked up where my mom left off, I was able to finish. We have a big site. My grandfather was an immigrant from the Czech-Hungary area.
Hmm.
We didn't know where the hell all the family was or any of the names because it generationally once again there's a gap. So he was 92 when he passed and he died in 2002. So he gave as much as he could as far as information, but he developed Alzheimer's, and a lot of stuff came out with the Alzheimer's that I didn't know about that I was able to verify later because he was flashing back a lot. So his brain would go back
Hmm.
to when he was 16 or 18, and I'd be able to
Yeah,
have a conversation with them at that age, which is
yeah,
really
my grandmother on my mom's side had dementia.
mm,
Yeah, so
it's a you know it's definitely a journey with dementia. You do see
hmm
different parts of someone's personality, but I love the the genealogy thing was has been exceptionally helpful with, especially with our kids. To you know kind of fill in those empty spaces and things like that. But was having the conversation about grandparents with a friend of mine. She didn't really wasn't that close to her grandparents growing up, and she was like, "I wish I had known her better." I'm like, genealogy.
Hmm.
Honestly, you can see a lot of stories that come out of a census report, and sometimes somebody filing something in court or whatever it is, or just a baptismal record. Those things all fill in the storyline, and it's quite amazing. It is. It is. I appreciate it more now um, than when my mom was alive because I think she drove me absolutely nuts with it,
Hmm.
and I couldn't get into it. I'm being honest. I was young. I was in my 20s. I'm like, something's wrong with you. I told her, and because she wouldn't, she was obsessed, and but she got it down to a T where she had photographs that would have been otherwise thrown out had she not intervened at the time she did, and stuff like that. And it was she had all these little adventures, and tell my son when he was very little all about it. So now that he's older, he shares those stories with, because I have two other children, um, to his siblings about her, about my grandmother, because he was able to meet her, even though he was very little at the time. He remembers her. So I was his great grandma, and I'm glad that he had that because my kids won't have that. So it's like you sometimes families go through periods of time where they struggle to stay a family. And it sounds really odd, but I think we all kind of go through this in life, whether it's a family disagreement and people stop talking to each other, which is a popular one. Um,
Very popular.
Good God. And, we lose connection to our families sometimes in that way, and we lose that, legacy, I guess. Having a grandparent you can learn stuff from, or at least ask, did you go dancing? I was talking to Second Street Marvel about this, talking about his grandma. I said, "Oh, well, she likes to dance. Did she like to dance? Was she a dancer?" And he was like, "I don't know." And she lives next door. He's like, "I'm gonna ask her." I'm like, and he wants to interview her. I'm like, and like save the recording for his children. I'm like, do it.
Yeah, my grandmother, my mom's side, she liked to do line dancing.
Oh,
You
did
know.
she?
Yeah.
What type of music was she into? Was it country music? Was she into polka? What was she into when she was
Oh
younger?
well, she was into she liked listening to Jitterbug and stuff like that, and she
Mm-hmm.
did she did like kind of the old country western stuff, not
Mm-hmm.
not anything newer, but
Right.
um but anything that came on that was new, and she was like, oh, that's just tacky, because she's from Birmingham, she was
Oh,
from Birmingham,
okay.
so you could imagine. Um, no, she was from Birmingham. My grandfather was from Arkansas on my mom's side. My dad's side, both from New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
It's like you get a little bit of you get the south and then you get the
Hmm.
north in there.
Yep, I do. I
Oh my
do.
God. I'm like, oh, that's a fun treat.
It is a fun treat. As I mean, I get the best of both worlds.
Yeah,
At least anything south of the Mason-Dixon line, and of course, the Eastern Seaboard,
yeah,
and then anything to the west is kind of foreign to me.
yeah. The wet.
even
Honestly,
though even though
yeah.
I did live in Austin for a while.
It's yeah. It is a bit of a culture shock when you go from like the east to the. Because I only knew the east. My grandparents were originally from the Midwest. Aside from
Hmm.
immigration things like that, but the Midwest, and then my dad's side was East Coast. So the West was not a thing until we moved out there. And when we first
Hmm.
arrived in Arizona, I was like, no wonder people like killed each other playing poker and shit. It was so hot, and it was a beautiful state living there, but zero interest of wanting to live there long term. I was like, this is not meant to be inhabitable.
Hmm.
It just doesn't feel safe there in that way. I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like desert life is not mine. So I lived in New Mexico for a little bit because that's where my husband is originally from,
Hmm.
and beautiful state. Elevation and I don't get along. So 6 years into that, I was like, I'm done. So we ended up in Texas, and I love Texas. So far, I've actually enjoyed it. There's a lot of a bit of everything where we're at. very diverse cultures. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting state, you know. I mean the culture is different, let's say from, I mean, you know this, from say from Austin to Dallas or
Mm-hmm.
Houston. I mean, it's a little bit different, you know, all around, depends on where you're at.
Oh yeah.
Much like Florida, I could tell you where what part of the country where people are typically from, you
Right.
know. It's
It,
like
yeah. It's
it,
it's a bit of a when you go to Florida, it's like you can tell who the New Yorkers are.
yeah, the New Yorkers are on the southeast side of the state. Um, but once you go to the west side of Tampa, you got all the people from Boston. You go right where I'm at right now, you got a lot of people from Michigan.
Yeah, Midwesterners.
Yeah, and then of course every winter you get the Canadians.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the snowbirds have arrived.
and they own it too. They own that title.
Oh yeah, they
They
do. We get winter
they
Texans here, and they own that shit like nothing. They get it snowbirds in Arizona, and it's the same thing. They're all
yeah.
Canadians, and we get Floridians here sometimes too seasonally. A lot
Hmm.
of Midwesterners though, a lot of them. I man, I don't think I could ever live in the Midwest. I've like visited like Michigan and Indiana, Illinois. Not interested. Like I've tried, I'm not interested. Oh god.
No,
I mean, have
no.
you ever
I
traveled to the Midwest?
I've been in Ohio. Does that count?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I was there for a couple months doing a vocational program. I don't want to go back.
And it's no offense to those from Ohio, but it's just I find a lot
Boring.
of those states.
It's boring.
It is. I'm like,
It
there's a lot
is
of
boring.
there's just like some places in the Midwest, the depression hit and it never left,
Yeah,
and it feels
I
this.
sure I
Oh,
sure felt depressed.
it's true, and
I was actually looking forward to the weekend to end and go back to class. That's how bad it was.
it's oh man, it is not a place to. I mean, there's gorgeous places like Michigan has some beautiful places. Don't get me wrong, and there are some beautiful places in Illinois. I
Hmm.
love Chicago. I enjoy those places to a point, but that's about it. Like I'm done. Like once I'm done, I'm good. I'm out. Moving on. Like I could never imagine living there with the cold all the time. Like that's just too much. I'm spoiled on like warm weather. Like I
Yeah, I
like having
know.
our cold seasons, but that's nowhere like Michigan, Midwest cold seasons. Like
Hmm.
Wisconsin, like where PB and PB and Lee live. There's no way in hell I'd handle that snow well at all. Mm-mm.
Oh no, I can't handle snow very well. I lived in No, for 3 years I was living in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and
Oh man.
I don't recommend. I mean, no, nothing against Tennessee, but I don't recommend living in Chattanooga because it's a valley,
Mhm.
and outside the summer it's just very gray, and you're in a valley, so the sun don't come out that much except for the summer,
Right.
and
Mhm.
um, and it's just, I mean, my like I was telling you at before we started, my skin was cracking so bad my knuckles were bleeding,
Oof.
and I put on moisturizer, so it's like me in the cold. I could stand the cold, but I can't stand the cold.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't mind it when it's cold, but after about a week, I was like, okay.
Oof.
And the dryness, I hate the dryness.
That was something like when we I lived in Arizona, it was dry as hell,
Hmm.
obviously. Excuse me. But it wasn't I did okay. Like it ended up working out better over time. But in the beginning it was terrible. We moved to New Mexico and with that cold winter cuz they get winters there and we had a blizzard when we like first moved to because we were just moving into our place when we went into New Mexico, and we had hit with a blizzard that weekend, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Like I had no idea that I was ignorant because I had been to Santa Fe. I knew they got snow, but we lived in just outside of Albuquerque, and it snowed, and I was horrified. I was like, I don't know if I can handle this. Like, and so went through 6 years of some nasty to beautiful winters, and
Hmm.
it is a beautiful state, but no way in hell would I want to live there full time. It was the elevation with the cold and the wind. Like I don't know how to express how this wind is not the normal kind of wind. When I had sat and spoke to Tariel, we discussed wind in New Mexico, and it is like its own breed of wind. And I don't know how to explain it, but if you ever want to feel cut through, it's like going to Michigan or Chicago, getting off that plane the first time. You just want to die. So you're like, oh, found it, killed my soul. But yeah, there's some beautiful places around the country, but man, that dryness it caught up with me in New Mexico, the dry, because of the because it was like I wouldn't have thought it would have, but it did. So, needless to say, though, I haven't had those problems in Texas here, but it's still there's a lot of beautiful places. But it's what is one state? This is just off the cuff. But what is one state you would like to live in that you haven't?
Oh, gee whiz. Hmm. I have to think about this for a minute.
Mm-hmm. It's fine,
Um,
and maybe not. Maybe like have a seasonal home even if you.
okay, well, if it's a seasonal home,
There you
okay,
go.
I
Yeah,
guess
that opens the door a little.
that does open the door a little bit. Um, you know, I always wanted to see what it was like in the Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, like, because I never been there. I never been. I mean, I'm interested in going to places I've never been.
Right.
Um, let's see. Um, but I'd say, I wouldn't mind giving Nevada a crack at
Mm.
it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, I don't know. There's just a few different places. I wouldn't mind living in Georgia. Depends on what part of Georgia.
Right. Yeah.
Depends.
Right.
Keyword is depends.
Georgia's a beautiful state too.
It is. It is. Um, I guess. Yes, the Carolinas. I wouldn't mind living there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the Carolinas. For me, it's like I like the I like the northern Carolina state. I love South Carolina too. I like them both, but I think as far as living, it would be if lived in North Carolina, it would be in the northern part of North Carolina, and
Hmm.
in South Carolina, I don't know. I kind of I'm all right with the South. Generally I'm pretty chill with the whole state. But I love
Hmm.
Georgia too. That's another beautiful state, and I liked staying out of Atlanta would be preferable.
Yes. Oh
Oh
gosh.
my God, that traffic! Holy shit!
I want to stay clear of 75 for the billboards alone.
Oh, I know, and there's
Oh
just
my
so much clutter, but there's some really awesome
God.
people there, and I visited there several times, and I loved it. You know, um, it's one of those places like I love going and visiting because when you go there, you feel like it's very homey to me. Like I feel at home
Hmm.
there. You know, but it's there's some places like as far as wanting to live in, there's very few. Like it's a hard thing. It's like if it's a timeshare, I think Montana would be amazing as a like what do you call it a seasonal home, not
Hmm.
full time because I don't want to always be in Montana because it's beautiful though. Like going fly fishing and shit, absolutely amazing. It'd be fun, but I would get sick of that shit after a while. I know I would.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of fly fishing too much.
Oh,
I prefer saltwater fishing. I don't really care for freshwater fishing.
yeah, it's one of those things. Everyone has a. I mean, I grew up on the Gulf. That was a
Hmm.
big part of growing up was going out on the Gulf and or going to the Keys or whatever Everglades even.
Hmm.
So it's like I had a big chunk of that in my childhood. Of I like going gator hunting, going on the Gulf, frog hunting, all that stuff that went with that. I love the Gulf. It's beautiful. But that's the only place actually. It's the saddest thing in the world that BP oil spill thing happened.
Yeah.
I'll never
Yeah.
let go of that. It's just I was so upset when that happened and devastated me. And the Gulf will never be the same.
No, it'll never be the same. And I want to say probably the red tide has probably still contributed
I agree.
by the BP thing. And they want to blame it on other things. Like, how are you going to blame it on that when it doesn't happen like that? I'm
Correct.
sorry, you know.
It's
Oh, my climate change.
exactly. I'm like, you assholes. Like, this stuff, yes, I'm sure contributed. Whatever climate change is going on has absolutely contributed to it. But I'm sure the oil, you know, had a big, you know, I don't know, force, tour de force of
Hmm.
causing a lot of this craziness, especially on the Gulf side of Florida, like with the beaches there. Oh my God. Like the amount of, like, like, what is it? The bacteria eating crap.
You talk about that, the blue green algae.
Yes.
Yeah, that. I think that's actually caused by, I don't know. There's something up with the jet stream
Yeah.
that it's not doing the same thing like it has been.
Mhm.
So it kind of builds up a little bit, especially on the southern part of the state on the Atlantic coast. But you go a little bit further north into, say, um, Brevard County and
Mhm.
in Indian River County,
Yes.
then you're not going to have that much of a problem. But you start going down into
Southern.
Martin County and St. Lucie County and further south, it becomes a problem if it's not addressed.
Well,
And
it's
it
been.
typically happens around I want to say springtime,
Yeah. It.
which it didn't used to happen before.
Correct.
That's the funny thing is I
Yep.
grew up most of my life there, and it never happened, and now it happens.
It's like a frequency now that it was never like before ever. Like it was more
Yeah.
considered a rarity, you know. And also the manatees taking a hit from all of
Hmm.
this crap that devastates it too. I mean, it's just the whole Gulf Coast area. Like I know they were shutting down beaches because of all that. Not just that, you know, back, the
The red tide.
yeah, not just that. It was like other stuff that was going on with the fishing
Hmm.
and all this other bizarre, occurrences that were coming, probably related to that jet stream. Because I've heard many like arguments that the jet stream is slowing down, if not going into defunct mode or resetting in some
Hmm.
way, which I wouldn't be surprised. But it's still a sad thing, and the BP thing, that I mean, I was already watching the Gulf prior to that because of other weird shit that was going on, but
Hmm.
that just pissed me off. Like those pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Um, and the cover-ups and the things that they try to decline. You know what I mean? They're like, "Oh, the damage isn't
Oh,
that
and
bad."
that stupid video they made. Oh gosh.
Oh,
I mean, that tourism video. I mean, I guess you weren't here to see it, but they would air this video, commercial, in Florida, Alabama, Louisiana,
mhm.
about, oh yeah, and we're doing stuff to
I
help
saw
blah
the
blah
commercial.
blah clean up. Okay, so I guess Texas too. Yeah, that's the Gulf as well.
Well, no, I
But
I have a lot of family still, like tucked
and
around the coast, man, and they
and
were
I'm
pissed.
I'd be pissed too. It's like you call that something? It's like you ruin the beach, you ruin the sea life, you ruin the ecosystem, you change things forever,
Right.
and you want to say that we're still open for business for tourism? You know,
Mhm.
you know who was more responsible? The mayor from Amity in the movie Jaws.
At least he decided to close the beach.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's the saddest thing in the world. It really is. It's one of the saddest things I think that happened since like we officially moved out of the state. I've gone back plenty, obviously, but
Hmm.
it's just it's such a debit. When that happened, I was a mess, like an absolute mess, and my husband was just like, "Oh my God," like I'm
Hmm.
like I'm so glad my grandparents aren't alive to see this, and like, you know, because that's just how bad it was, and they were lying, and it was just these corporations can really suck a dick. They really can.
Oh, I hate the media machine here because sad. I mean, I get the Tampa market news here,
Mm.
you know, and boy do I hate it. Um, and just the spin they put on things, it's just to cover some things up. It's like, yeah,
Yep.
I can see who's lining your pockets. I know exactly who's lining your pockets.
Oh man,
I
it's
mean, between BP and what's it, U.S. Sugar,
oh oh
you know,
yep, yep.
you
Oh
know,
my
I mean,
God,
come
those
on. I mean, it pisses me off.
It's one of those things that blows my mind that people still they just don't have the ambition to question.
Hmm.
You know, don't be a because how I look at truth is this: truth will exist whether it has your permission or not. It
Yep.
simply
Yep.
exists. So
Hmm.
whether or not someone lies about it, confesses to it, or tries to play the fraud game, truth always comes out inevitably. And the truth is, there's a lot of people who like to put their head in the sand and say, well, I don't want to worry about that. I just want to worry about my bread and butter. But when those things
Oh
start to
gosh, yeah.
affect your bread and butter, you're going to be a very angry camper, crying, losing your shit, because you chose to stick your head in the ground. The only
Yep.
person to blame, aside from the assholes who are the perpetrator, is yourself. You know,
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. You could at least took the necessary precautions to say move away,
Mhm.
or we could say guard your nest, whatever it is that's in jeopardy.
Right.
You could have taken the necessary precautions, and when you chose not to do it, you have yourself to blame.
Right.
I equate it to like say there's something that said, okay, try for a month free trial, and you do that, you put in your credit card number, and then you forget to cancel it in time, and you see that, oh crap, I'm paying for this, and well, you're to blame because you didn't cancel in time. Maybe you shouldn't even done it to begin with. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Um, so it it makes me I'm not a cynic. I guess I don't know, but it makes me laugh just a little bit that they didn't think that, hey, there's consequences to not only actions but inactions.
Correct. That's the big one. The inaction is what leads to all the other crap piling up. And
Hmm.
then you have to deal with it because now it's in your backyard. And it's like, listen, this should be a preventative, proactive thing. And
Hmm.
this is the struggling that we're going to be seeing in the future is the reaction as opposed to the proaction. Like there's no being a little bit more proactive, making sure
Hmm.
that something is done ahead of time or understanding a situation for what it is rather than the emotional appeal of things. Like earlier, before we came on, the oh god, like I feel like this is that subject that um, it's going to be all over and obnoxious. But they did formally impeach Trump in the House,
Hmm. Yeah.
and he's one of three presidents that were formally impeached in the House, which was Andrew Jackson, Bill Clinton, and Trump would be the third, technically. Um, so I did take a step back and I was like, okay, and this is before all this crap. And I was
Hmm.
like, what are they trying to do? And I was hearing all this bullshit. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, none of this makes any sense. Like, what you guys have been trying to impeach this guy since God knows when, and I still don't know what he's like. I'll ask you, what did he do about what exactly is led up to this impeachment?
Let me
As
tell you what I believe. First of all, they're trying to say this Ukrainian phone call, which apparently he released the transcripts and it didn't look like it was, and they blew it up way out of proportion. But I'm going to tell you exactly what he did to warrant that. They've been gunning for this guy since day one,
mm-hmm,
and whether you like him or hate him or agree somewhat or 100% or whatever, the fact of the matter is they hate him, and they hate him because he's not part of the club. And one of the things that he did, no one talks about this, he did not take campaign contributions from U.S. Sugar, and everybody else did. And he said, I want to close you down.
mm,
He said, I'm going to do whatever they can to fix those locks down there in Florida because that's a federal lock. Thank you, Sierra Club. Thank you, um, deceased asshole George H.W. Bush.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Bush has got a nice legacy in Florida. For those who don't know.
Yeah, screw
Mm-hmm,
that guy.
mm-hmm,
And because of that, the governor, no matter who it is, can't fix it because it's a federal issue. Thank you, deceased asshole President George H.W. Bush.
mm-hmm.
Um, So that's one reason, and there's several others, but it's just the fact that another reason that it stems from is he's not part of the club. He didn't go through any initiation rites. This is just coming from me. Um, and so even the stuff that he does that they would agree on, they they are livid at because it didn't come from them. So I would like to know, is he going to have the protection that we're perceived to have in the Senate? Is it going to be down party lines for the Senate? Maybe there's going to be a few breakaways that will say yeah, but you need, I think, 67 votes in the Senate, so that's going to be a tough order.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. Even though yeah, people are expecting it just to get kicked out,
Mm-hmm.
it will be interesting to see what maneuvers do take place because
Mm-hmm.
the fact, the way this looks on the books, like I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to a friend of mine, the way that this looks is so terrible and so petty, and it's embarrassing. It's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely embarrassing. Do I think
Trump,
for
Trump, Trump hurt my fifis. Let's impeach him.
that's the way it looks?
It does look like that.
Because it was the Russian thing. Now it's the Ukraine thing. Now we're moving down the whole party lines because everyone's bored. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if we were to look behind the curtain at all of the other stuff that's connected to the Ukraine, it would have everybody on both sides of the party on fire.
Yeah, why aren't we talking about Hunter Biden? Why aren't we not talking about that? Why are we not talking about uh, the whole fake dossier thing?
Oh, yeah.
Why are we not talking about the conspiracy to get rid of Trump during the whole Mueller investigation? You
That's
know?
that's the stuff that I was reading as it was going along at the time too. It was like you're reading this crap and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. Like none of this makes it. This is the dumbest thing I've ever read when I read that stupid dossier.
Hmm.
When they released. And it was the dumbest thing. I was like, who the fuck? Who wrote this bullshit? It was like some kind of
It looked like it
4chan.
came out of the. It looked like it came out of the Onion.
It looked like it came out of the 4chan. I'm like, somebody on 4chan wrote this, somehow, quote, leaked it. And this is what we're looking at is some crazy shit. Talking about hotel rooms and peeing and all this. Oh my god. How embarrassing. And so it just keeps getting worse. And then all this stuff starts like, there's all these like, quote, grassroots protests and, people saying, impeach him, impeach him.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
so I'm like, all right, Soros, you've been busy. I'm sure. You've been a busy, busy bee. So now we're moving on to the Senate. Uh, I don't. I'm kind of like with you on this. I don't. I mean, yes, we're expecting it to go there and it'll be kicked out. It's a waste of time. But what does this look terrible in books? It
It
looks
does.
terrible.
You
It's
see that he did a public letter to Nancy Pelosi
mm-hmm.
on White House stationery, so it's a matter of public record now. Because even though he could have done it all in a tweet, or a series of tweets, it's like no, no. There's some people that don't go on Twitter. Nope, there's some people that go on Facebook, and some people don't go at all. So guess what? It's going to be a part of history now.
I think it's beautifully
I
done.
I thought it was hilarious.
Because in
And
the end, I don't agree with everything he does. Like I'm
no,
not
me
a
neither.
quote supporter, but I am very amused by the he's playing the same game the whole time, and they still are not buying. They're trying to go at it,
They're treating him like a typical politician.
and he's not.
He's not. Basically, if you ever wonder, it's like, gee, I wonder what happened if Dad was president. Well, there you go.
Somebody's dad is in there, off his medication, cats and dogs, mass hysteria. That
It's
guy.
like it's like you know what? I'll fix the country. It's like I could just imagine like a middle-aged guy and his lazy boy smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer. It's like you know what? Then he like puts down it. He like burns out the cigarette. I'm gonna fix things.
And that's, I mean, there's been good things, there's been bad things out of his presidency,
Hmm.
but the best, there's the trolling, and because
Oh gosh, it's gold. It's comedy gold.
it's like your drunk uncle got on Twitter and told everybody to go fuck themselves, and they took it really personally, you know.
I I mean it's entertaining. It really is.
And I mean that's terrible to say because this is our country, this is our quote president, but at the very least, he's brought out the true colors of behavior,
Yeah.
and it's because they're doing it to themselves.
I mean
So
it's manifesting. They become unhinged.
and this
And
extremist,
it's like it took someone like him to
mm-hmm,
do it, whereas it would have never been done because it's I mean it's my theory that their selected guy was Marco Rubio the whole time,
yeah,
and that Ted Cruz was there to offset Rand Paul,
yeah,
and they just thought Donald Trump, oh well, he's got another book to sell, so whatever. Nope, he went for it. He
and
went
it
for it, and he got it,
listening to
and
them
and
justify
Clinton
those
was
polls.
yeah.
I mean, that was hilarious. They're like, oh, Clinton's gonna win. Everyone thought she was gonna win. So when that night happened, um, I was I was shocked but not shocked. It
I
was like
wasn't shocked at all. I knew it was gonna happen.
I didn't. I was not. I was shocked because I thought, and this is being honest, I thought that the shit was gonna be rigged. So even
Hmm.
if he had been elected, somehow it would turn. It wouldn't
Oh,
happen.
there was rigging, but there was enough people to offset the rigging.
Yeah, because they did the like he there was telling people to use paper ballots,
Hmm.
and they were really encouraging this instead of using the automated crap, which is crap, and doing it in a paper ballot form. And I think that mass movement of people saying, you know what, fuck those machines, I want to do a paper ballot, whatever
Hmm.
side they were on, you know, that's what they did. I think that made a huge. I mean, I was like so impressed with that. I was like, well, at least the truth is there was enough people to elect him,
Yeah,
and
yeah, and I think there's possibly going to be more this next time,
oh
at least
god,
number wise, because um, now that of course, he's got a little bit more control federally,
yeah,
things could be monitored at the polls. Maybe not as many people that are, well, say for the sake of argument, undocumented, might not have a chance to come and vote.
yeah, because I
Yeah.
know that the voter fraud thing they've been even for local elections, the
Hmm.
states, especially
Yeah.
let's say in more conservative states, they've been on top of
Yeah.
it. One of my friends that lives in Arizona, this last election they had, this was a very interesting election. There was a lot of shady bullshit. They had a Democrat who won, but there was
Hmm.
problems around that election that now it's on the back burner. But there was a lot of weird behavior around the election. Well, right before her election, um, she she was going to be the I think she's going to be the new governor. But anyway, um, my best friend is they are more conservative, so I'm an independent, but they have they're Republican, and so she went to check her voter registration to see where her polling station was and everything, and she found out that magically her party got switched from being a Republican to a Democrat. She's never ever in her life been a Democrat. She's always either been an independent or a Republican, right? Couldn't I think she did one other year with some other party. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, but it was the weirdest thing to her, and she was like, I have never changed my
Wow.
voting party, and this happened. Um, I think it was a couple years ago. So now, with the upcoming election, she's very paranoid,
Wow.
and
That's horrible.
I was like, holy shit, and I've been like kind of worried. I'm like, how would you know? And this is the other thing is having to keep an eye on this. There's a lot of states, and I'm sure you heard about this about people who were deceased that were suddenly voting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Mayor Daley special.
Yeah, like I- I'm like worried about that. I'm like, well, what if someone in my family is registered to vote and they're dead? Like, what do I do? Like, who do I go after for that? Like where
I'd
do
like
you?
to know too. How do you reverse that? How do you stop that? I mean, there's a wonderful movie about that. It's called Black Sheep.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's
Yep.
a hilarious movie.
And but that's a question I've wondered because I'm like, what if like suddenly I start getting like voter registration shit for, or like updates, or hey, you want to renew your, your voting registration or your party or whatever,
Hmm.
and it's for a deceased person in your family. Like, what the fuck do you do with that? So I've had to kind of keep. I don't know. The best thing I can do is just check registration for the states that we've, those individuals lived in when they either passed away or whatever. I haven't seen anything yet, but the moment I do, I'm gonna hop on it like you have no idea, um, and just contact whoever I need to at the state and be like, this person is registered. They are deceased. Check your fucking records. Um, that's the part that I never quite grasped. So the fact that they're trying to get people who are quote not legal citizens to be able to vote, and then they have dead people voting, that's usually a big red flag that there's a problem.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you know, you're like, well, this escalated poorly. You know, so yeah, those are questions I think about though when we come up to election seasons and things like that. But I wanted to begin to wrap up with you, but one of the things that I usually do at the end of these one-on-ones is a questionnaire that's taken off of Inside the Actor Studio.
Hmm.
I did it with Stig. He was the one that suggested it, and I was like, that's actually a great idea. It's called the Pivot Questionnaire,
Okay.
and it's the 10 questions that usually James Lipton would ask the guests at the end of the show. So this is, he would address that. So the first question for you, Ryan, what is your favorite word?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'll be honest with you.
What's one word that if not no curse words because you'll get the question about a curse word, but as far as a regular word that when you think of words that you if you're writing that you enjoy using or you just like the way it sounds, what word pops into your head?
Oh, revenue.
That's an interesting word.
Hmm.
What
Not
is
that it's in any of my writings, but I just like the word.
What kind of like has a classic feel to it,
It does.
like the old reviews they used to have, but revenue you imagine like it's a wonderful life. Okay. I'm gonna look at these revenue. I don't know. Um, what is your least favorite word? Like a word you can't stand or don't like.
My least favorite word. Ah, golly, I'm trying to think. Um,
Sometimes it's the words that like we cringe
uh,
when we hear it.
okay. Um, I don't know, the British dialect.
Oh my.
I mean, there's a lot of words, especially from Londoners.
Oh, the way they say certain things.
Yeah, like in it,
Oh, yeah.
or like yeah after everything. You're like that. Yeah, it's like golly, man.
Okay,
You're
let's
civilized. You're civilized. Come
right.
on.
It's just certain words are kind of lazy, even though it's supposed to be this very elegant language. It's clean, right?
Hmm.
Us Americans ruining everything. So, this is your third question now. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
All right. Um, Creatively, I would have to say that it is. I don't know, just kind of this sense of something needing to be there, and when it's not there, I gotta I want to put it there. I want to find some way to put it there. Um, Emotionally, if it's needed, I suppose. Um, like I try to make sure I have my emotions in check. But I guess okay. So what turns me on emotionally? I don't know the sort I guess sort of the drive, like the adventure, the the something that needs to be there.
Right.
And yeah, okay, I guess that's two in the same one. But spiritually, um, I would have to say that it is most certainly like this sort of like cleansing,
Mhm.
this just pure, this raw. That's just that's just been wiped clean and just like I'm like everything will be okay
Yeah.
type of thing.
Almost like releasing a burden.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So what turns you off?
What turns me off is pointless actions, like if there's no point to it.
Mm. Mhm.
For instance, if someone's cursing a lot, but they're not cursing in context.
Right.
I don't mind people curse or whatever. There's that. You could just kind of sense the I'm angry, and this is the only thing that I'm angry all the time type of thing. When people are angry all the time without cause, without wanting to calm down or
Mhm.
whatever, that's a turn off. Or people that that can't feel good about anything, so they have to make others feel bad or worse than they do.
Mm. Right.
That's a big turn off to me. Um, or I guess putting themselves before others. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself and
Right.
making sure that you're able to survive another day. But I'm saying like
Like the pointlessness of
the pointlessness, like
Mhm.
it's the me show, the me all the
Man,
time.
that's so true.
Yeah,
It's like a disease.
it is a disease. I guess is that a form of narcissism, right?
Yep, it
Yeah.
is. Yes, sir. Now, what is your favorite curse word?
Mm, favorite curse word.
Mhm. It's funny. This is one of those ones where it's like, ah, but there's such an array.
Well, no, I mean I don't really like to curse, but
What is your go-to curse word that you like more often will be like that'll be the word. If you're going to curse, that one's going to pop out.
probably ass.
Yeah. It's a nice versatile word.
It is.
It can mean many things and at the same time be still insulting. Like if somebody
Yeah.
says you're just being an ass. Yeah, it's like the most condescending thing ever. So what sound or noise do you love?
mm, I'd probably have to go with um, F on the bass guitar.
Mm.
Just a nice low F, followed by a B flat.
So an F and then a B flat.
Hmm.
On a bass guitar though.
Yeah, or an upright,
Okay.
but mostly bass guitar. Actually, no, take that back. On a Fender Jazz,
Okay.
going through um, going through an Ampeg. Um, Ampeg head into a 15, like an EV 15.
Right.
Yeah.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Mm, let's see. Sound or noise I hate the most
Mm-hmm.
would be the sound of a country guitar, the twang of a country electric guitar, followed by the sound of people putting on the far back pickup of an electric guitar. Um, and then even worse, I don't know. There's a lot of sounds I hate. I could tell you more about what I hate than what I do like about sound. I'm an audio engineer by trade. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so yeah, this one. Turning up the horns too high indoors where you could actually, the horns. I mean the high drivers. I
Oh.
don't know. It's just like that people making the sound over crisp than actually nice and full and rich. I don't know. It's like people don't know how to do things anymore. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go on a tangent there.
You're like, I can't deal with this. When
Yeah.
somebody has a specialty, especially in audio or in music in general, or any kind of
Hmm.
job where you're dealing with sound comes through in a very particular way. And if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't hit that mark, it can ruin the entire track or the song or
Yes,
whatever you're doing. So
exactly.
I've heard this before. My middle son, his sensitivity is sound. So he's very sensitive about it. And I only started really paying attention. I mean, I love music and I love, there's certain like songs and singers that I can't deal with because they don't hit the tones right. The song sounds off and everyone thinks it's great and I don't get it.
Yeah,
But with him, it's always about frequency of sound
yeah,
and
yeah.
how, oh,
There are frequencies. I mean that's what sound is frequencies.
right, the frequencies that bother him, like that's what he'll, like he brings it to my attention immediately. And I'm
Let
like,
let me
whoa.
let me guess. 1,000 hertz, 500 hertz. Um, I would have to venture to say probably 8,000 hertz and possibly 16,000.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And
Yes,
it's all the time.
tho- those are annoying.
And he, oh man, I've never seen, like he wears uh school. He has like noise cancellating, headphones, things like that for noise and for certain, like environments and things like that. And he's going to be turning 12, but he's like mental age about 7.
Mm,
So when he communicates it sometimes it's very cartoonish. So he reverts
hmm
into character a lot. So he'll be Courage the Cowardly Dog, or he'll be Mario, or Sans from Undertale, different things. And he mimics their voices as a way of
mm.
adapting.
Wow, you know what? And does he do a good job at mimicking?
Yeah. He,
You know what? Your son has very fantastic hearing.
like, he gets it
I'm
down.
a bit on the jealous side.
Like,
Um,
he can do impressions of these things. Like, we went and we met the voice of Mario, Charles Martinet.
yeah, I did too one
Okay.
time.
So he met Charles, and Charles did one impression of Yoshi.
Hmm
He went Yoshi, that little noise, when
hmm
Yoshi, and for like months he was doing that. He does it still perfectly, like down to
Right.
the T of these little like. And he did Wario, and he's tried Wario, and I think he has it down now. I don't know. He hasn't done it in a while, but he'll do impressions of these things, and I'm like, what a gift, man.
It is a gift.
I mean, I
I mean,
can't do that.
I mean, I guess on the technical side, just have him play with like a graphic EQ, and then I guess on the creative side, just let him go into voice acting if he wants to.
I've been asking him about it because he loves like okay, this is one of his things he's done for a while. And it's off topic in a sense, but it's not. He'll watch YouTube videos of like Let's Play because he enjoys certain people who do Let's Plays, but his is like his. It's in his genre. So for a while it was Five Nights at Freddy's. He likes jump scare stuff, and he seems to get it. Something's wrong with him, but he's a little morbid. But he likes the jump scares a little bit, so he was playing Five Nights at Freddy's, Undertale, what's the other one? Cuphead, things like that. And he mimics the behavior and the sound. So like in Cuphead, it's like an old 20s, 30s, 40s cartoon where they all kind of like they all seem to be like moving in motion all the time when they're talking. So they'll kind of be hopping along and they just stand in place and hop as they're talking like
Hmm
an old school cartoon. And he'll talk in that way, and he'll mimic that transatlantic a little. He hasn't gotten it down, but
Oh wow.
he's trying. And so it's a lot to do with sound and accent. Like the other thing is like he was learning Japanese from. He got interested in learning another language
Mm.
last year, and so he's been learning Japanese. And he can, like, that's the bizarre thing to me, was like he could pick up language. Children already do it to an extent when they're young, pick up like a secondary language, but his is more about getting the accent right. So Spanish, he has a perfect accent, and with different types of accents, like the transatlantic, he thought was funny the way they
Oh
talked.
yeah. Yes, it
Like
is.
he's like, they
It
speak kind of weird, mom. I'm like, well,
it's actually not natural. No one actually spoke like that. They only did that for the movies and film.
right. And I told him, I said, well, that's just how they were in the movies. And he was like, it's so weird. And so he mimics that, and a lot of it is that need to have the sound down to a T, and it's obsession. It's very much an obsession for him.
Well,
So it's
that is
like
fantastic.
It's interesting. Children are very. I mean, they all have their things, and like for him, it's like he really doesn't like big crowds of people and things like that, but he loves the cartoonish parts of development and stuff. So we've been kind of like introducing him to new things slowly because kids are going to do what the kids are going to do, and everyone has, and he gets stuck in a, what do you call it? Tunnel vision.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
He stays there. So, but when it comes to music or it comes to sound or voice, he loves voices and the way that people say things. So, like, I'll show him impressionists all the time that do, different people, like whether that's Frank Caliendo or,
Oh, that's great.
right, absolutely top shelf. But it's introducing him to those different things that, hey, these people do this for a living, and he's like, oh. And so, what would you like to do? Voice acting, because that's something he did so well at as far as mimicking voices or sounds of characters. Because like with Courage, he doesn't talk a lot, so a lot of it's more physical and grunting or his cries, so stuff like that. But anyway, yeah. So music and sound, I absolutely understand the whole thing about not liking certain tones with music. I absolutely do. Or sound in general. Like he picks it up quicker than I do. Like I won't like it, but he's like instantly like that's trash.
Oh, and there's a difference between a square wave and a sawtooth wave as far as distortions go.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
even order versus non-even order.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting how certain people have that quality though, where they can pick up something's off here, and they tell you
Hmm.
immediately what it is because they're familiar with that frequency or how it's used and manipulated in a sense. Um, now, what? Here's a question for you. Moving on. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Hmm,
It's an interesting one.
that is an interesting one. Let's see. Well, I mean, right now I'm doing writing,
Mm.
um, and and I'm also doing stuff with. I'm gonna look into trading some assets, but if I had to choose, man, that's a really tough one. I guess I guess I wouldn't mind giving a crack at film,
Mm.
um, just so I could actually make something to say, you know what, if uh if the mouse ain't treating your space wizards right, I can make a space wizard thing, you know?
Right. Exactly. Oh, hello, kitty.
Oh yes, Biscotti.
Biscotti.
Biscotti the cat.
Is Biscotti a girl or boy?
He's a boy.
Mm. That's funny. We have cats too, and it's like
Yeah.
they have their own little quirks right now.
Yeah, he's upset at me because I'm not off the computer yet.
How dare you, Dad? Uh,
Yep. And he's trying to attack me. Okay,
we're
here's
almost done, Biscotti. Don't worry. Mine
take
are
up.
out there yelling at my husband. So, haha.
Mhm.
What profession would you not like to do?
Oh gosh. So what there's a lot of them I wouldn't like to do. Um Now does that include never want to do again or
Um, yeah, you can include that.
oh, gee whiz. I never want to be a truck loader again.
Ooh,
I
rough.
never want to I guess I'd never want to have a clerical job, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, and I certainly, I guess, yeah, I guess that does fall in the clerical. I don't know. I'd never want to be a stenographer.
Oh,
I don't think I could keep up.
yeah. Yeah, and it's such a clerical type job too. You're just
Yeah,
sitting.
okay, yeah, you're right. Clerical. Clerical. I just don't want to do anything clerical.
Yeah, it's just that being stuck in a room with behind a, whether that's any type of typing machine or like whether that be a
And there's
computer.
plenty of people that want to do clerical, so that's why you hire secretaries.
Exactly, because they want to be in that position.
Yep.
Now, last question is, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Um, Take a load off.
uh,
uh, but but yeah, that's I guess well done. Well done, my faithful servant. Then I know I will be going to heaven.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, take a load off would be, you know.
Now, for the audience again, just so they know where they can find you, you're on BitChute, you're on Twitter, you're on
Hmm.
YouTube. You said Twitch also, correct?
Yep, I'm on Twitch as well. I mean, yeah, yeah, I don't have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, but I could always stream from my phone on Twitch, which is I don't like being tethered to the computer.
So on Twitch, are you gaming on Twitch, or is it
No,
just
I am not. I'm doing the exact same stuff. In fact, sometimes I have my OBS going right to Twitch, and
nice?
that way I could just hit export to YouTube and just go down the chain to the BitChute. Um, so yeah, you can find me on twitch.tv/Brion the Observer or youtube.com/Brion the Observer or bitchute.com/user/Brion the Observer.
And you can also
And you
find him on
and you
Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter. My handle is at Warrior Sphere.
hmm
At Warrior Sphere. So that's where you can find me.
And the thing is that's different about Brian is that he is bringing different perspectives to things, and there's a lot of oversaturation of the same echo chamber type of videos out there and creators out there, and there's a lot of mimicking and trying to ride coattails, all that kind of behavior. But Brian brings something that's very different to the table, but at the same time, yeah, he's going to talk about his interests and things that he likes, whether that is comic books or maybe that is Star Wars, but it's not going to be the same take. It's going to be his own. And I think that that's what defines Brian separately from many other creators, in my opinion. So I highly recommend that people go and check him out and take the opportunity to check out some of his videos. Find him on these platforms and please give him a follow on Twitter and BitChute. BitChute is the secondary base right now for YouTube in case it goes off the rails. And,
Hmm.
but you can also find him on YouTube. And let's try to get him to, 200 subs, if not more.
Yeah, I hit that
Oh,
actually.
you did? Okay,
Let's try
great.
let's try to get you to 200 subs.
I'm almost there. Almost. But yeah, keep pushing Brian up though, and do check out his channel because he does have some great stuff. And the thing is like you have to have people who are themselves because a
Hmm.
genuineness is what makes the creator community its own. The people who are just what do you want to call them? Instagram models or people that are just out there to flash tits for money, saying that with love, or those who are out there trying to make a difference. There's a big difference between these people. And Byron is on the right track. And he's doing things that are his own, nobody else's. So I really hope everyone will take an opportunity to check him out. Thank you again, Brian. I know last week I had to reschedule with you because of my plague. The plague is gone.
Thank,
But
thank, thank you, Mad Squirrel. I really do appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and talk with me. It means a lot. Thank you.
oh, not a problem. It was wonderful having you on. It was an awesome chat. We were all over the place, but that's the point is having a conversation. So it's like little pieces and we ramble about stuff and then we get back on a different topic because if it's sometimes getting to know people is just from general conversation. It's like sitting in a room. Like we're all sitting here together, those who are listening, and we're all having this conversation where you can kind of go, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Oh, that's bullshit." You know, or and be able to have that conversation naturally as opposed to me going, here's 50 questions and you know and kind of taking away the personality of the person through that because in a sense some people get caught up in what's the right answer as opposed to let me tell you what my answer is or let me tell
Hmm.
you my story or let me tell you this anecdote. Okay, Biscotti. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Brian, for coming
All right.
on. And I will talk to you guys later in the audience. Have a good night or good morning wherever you guys are out there.